live from the Salem 5 studio here for Boston has entered the chat. Time to get into some Patriots, but more importantly, Drake Maye in the MVP campaign. I am borderline on the cusp of making, signs, having balloons, streamers, maybe even a t-shirt. Is that a little too much? Are we there yet, or am I overdoing it already?
I'm not going to lie. I don't know the answer to that, but I just want to see it. I want to see you do it all.
I feel like you don't trust that I have that level of celebration in me.
No, I know you do.
Okay.
We just don't get to see it.
I just get a lot of Wednesday Adam references around
what
here.
happens with Kasey? Let me take you all behind the curtain, okay? She is very school-spirited, but what happens is we, collectively, you, me, all of us, don't get to see it because she's in her house standing up, screaming at the come on! And her neighbors are like, oh my God, we have to do this again
lady.
Every night.
And I started off really chill with the Patriots, just a few moments where I kind of lost my cool, and then Bruins happened, and I very much just kept losing my ever-loving mind. But then once we started talking about the Drake Maye campaign, then every little thing that he does, my neighbors have probably heard 3 times me screaming like that's my MVP.
I'm going to give you a Drake Maye moment from me.
Okay. Oh.
Last year, we had Kurt Warner here on Nesson, did an interview with him, and the interview was about Kurt Warner's career. He's a Hall of Famer. So it was 20 minutes long.
Right.
But I'm not going to talk to Kurt Warner and not ask about this rookie quarterback at the time that we have in Drake Maye.
Had a good preseason. And at this time, by the way, Drake hadn't even started yet. It was still the Jacoby Brissett experience. We all remember that. Experience or experiment?
Well, let's not go there.
Okay.
I'm trying to be nice.
Today?
Halloween's tomorrow. Be careful. So I asked Kurt Warner, I go, hey, Drake, a lot of people are saying the footwork, the this, the that. He goes, I'm not there every day, so I can't tell you his work ethic. But he says, what I see on tape, he has all the tools. And if the work ethic is what I'm hearing, this is Kurt Warner.
Yeah.
If it's what I'm hearing, when he gets it all, you'll see it. It'll be like a light bulb going off. I think that's what we're seeing.
You know what I love about this? Kurt may have not been able to tell us about the work ethic, but Scott Chadwick can tell us about Drake Maye's work ethic. Joining us here on Boston has entered the chat. Good morning, Coach. How's it going?
Morning, guys. How are y'all?
We are doing great. I love the y'all. Thank you for that. I get made fun of for it here in Boston, and I've tried to tone it down a little bit, Coach.
Not me. I turn it up, Coach.
We'll see what happens. Well, you could tell us and give us some illumination to the work ethic that you saw in Drake Maye in high school, because that's where it starts. I followed my brother's journey when he was going through the recruiting process from high school to college. It's a lot of pressure on these guys, but also this is where a lot of development and confidence comes to lie. What did you see out of Drake Maye early on?
Yeah, kind of the typical first guy on the field, last guy off the field. And I think part of that, too, is the kid, he loves football. He loves football. He loves everything that comes with it. So he wants to be out on the field. And I think the other thing I used to always see was the time that he would put in with our receivers, outside of practice. It wasn't just the normal scheduled stuff. This was a guy that, got those guys together on his own, and they did a lot of work away from the normal football stuff too. So can't say enough about the work ethic he had in high school.
Yeah, Coach, I have family down there in Charlotte, spent a lot of time down there throughout my life growing up. What I've always noticed from people down there, other than the Southern drawl, is the ethos, sort of that work ethic, that Southern gentlemanness that Drake Maye brings. I think a lot of this stuff where he's from, Coach, and his upbringing has to do with what we see on the football field. Is that fair for me to say?
During leading up to the draft, I got asked a lot from teams about, hey, this all shucks, this, yes, sir, no, sir. Is that real? And I'm like, oh, no, that's 100% who Drake is. He's extremely respectful. A guy that, you'd want to marry your daughter, that kind of guy. But don't let that fool you. Deep down there is a fierce competitor and a guy that takes an awful lot of pride in the product he puts on the field. I kind of used to call him, he's kind of a silent assassin. He'll be that guy that smiles and says all the great things, but deep down inside, he's a guy that wants to kill you. Yeah. And you talk about his upbringing. I think probably that a lot of that came from the fact he was the youngest of 4, very talented athletes in the family. And he probably had to fight, as a kid for, to get hit his own.
Yeah, talk to me about the family, because all of his brothers are absolute studs. He's the youngest, but I mean, I imagine there in North Carolina, that family, that May family, it has to be like royalty, right, Coach? Am I reading it right?
Well, yeah, and it starts with Mark, the dad. Mark was a great athlete in high school, was all-state in 2 sports at Independence and football and basketball, and then, went to Carolina. So, I mean, it kind of all started with Mark. And then obviously, Luke goes to Carolina and is a legend, playing basketball there. And, Cole goes to the College World Series at Florida. I remember when Drake was a sophomore, I remember he had like a 3-month stretch there where he got to go to the Final Four and watch his brother play. And then in June, go to Omaha and watch his brother play.
Wow.
And, a lot of families certainly don't have anything remotely like that. And the one thing I will say, it's an extremely competitive family, but man, those guys have each other's backs, and they're their biggest fans. And, Drake was just as happy, supporting his brothers. And I remember when he was a sophomore playing a basketball game, and he was a very good basketball player. I mean, he could have gone to Virginia or Clemson, had big time offers to play basketball. Well, we're playing a playoff game his sophomore year, and the student section of the other team starts chanting, "Luke is better, Luke is better." And Drake looks at them and goes, "Yeah, he is." And Drake shakes his head like, "Yeah, he is better." And, and it kind of like they didn't know what to do after that. They didn't know how to respond.
Okay. All right, Coach, I don't want to start no stuff here. It's just us talking.
Fair warning.
I mean, there's a lot of athletes in this family. At that time, Drake was very humble. Yeah, he is better. Coach, I'm just asking you straight up. Is Drake Maye the best out of all of them? Because you know, Coach. Keep it real with us. Is Drake Maye the best out of all of them? Is he the best Maye?
No question. It's not. It's no question. And I really believe Luke, Cole and Bo would probably agree with me on that. That he's certainly the most accomplished guy. And I think the biggest thing is when you add in the second sport. Luke was great in basketball. Cole was great in baseball. Bo was great in basketball. Drake was the North Carolina High School Athlete of the Year as a junior. So I think when you add in the fact that, first of all, he's in the NFL and that part of it, and then the fact that you add in that this guy could have been a Power 5 basketball player as well.
Ooh. That's insane.
Wow.
I mean, I might sound biased, but the youngest siblings tend to just kind of do the best at encompassing all the things that the family does so well. Clearly, I'm the youngest. But the mental pressure that can potentially come with having such an outstanding family, or the reprieve that comes with you knowing that you can just kind of digest everything, learn everything, absorb everything, and apply it to what you want to do. Can you just kind of talk about the mental muscle that you saw Drake Maye flexing in high school and how that's developed now to him being an NFL superstar?
Yeah, and again, I think I don't mean to keep going back to the his how he grew up, but again, he had to fight for that, and he had to toughen up, as a kid, and I think again he learned a lot of that, and then to come to with Myers Park being a sophomore starting quarterback in a program that at that time, I think his sophomore and junior year we were nationally ranked both years, so to come in there with a bunch of older guys and seniors. One of the things I think mentally about him, we lost one regular season game his sophomore year. And this is a guy that threw 7 interceptions in 2 full years, probably almost 30 games of playing quarterback. Well, he threw 3 1/2 in the regular season game that we lost. Well, we came back and played that same team in the playoffs, and he threw for over 300 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions.
Jeez.
Because he was not going to let the seniors go down, and he was not going to let the seniors lose.
Wow.
That is so impressive to hear. Kind of along those lines, I mean, we're all sitting here talking about the MVP that will be Drake Maye, but you got to start with the things that you have to work on most, the uncomfortable parts of your game. What were some things that you saw him kind of have to work through, or weaknesses that he turned into strengths during his high school time?
This is a guy that, again, threw 30 touchdowns and had 5 interceptions as a sophomore. So there was really there was never really a period where he showed any weaknesses. As a junior, he threw 50 touchdowns and had two interceptions. So in the 2 years he started for us, he had 87 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. We didn't have his senior year, because of COVID. So we didn't have that. But, yeah, it's hard to sit here and tell you, what weaknesses he fixed in high school, because he was the best quarterback in the state right off from the first game he started as a sophomore. I would say the biggest thing he learned and the disappointing part about not having his senior year was he learned his junior year how to change things at the line of scrimmage and how to get us, in the best situations. I remember Josh McCown worked with us a lot that year, who's now the quarterback coach of the Vikings. And I remember Josh looking at Drake and looking at me one day, and I was the play caller, and Josh said, "Look, he's really good at calling plays, talking about me." He goes, "But your job is to make him perfect, and your job is to make sure he doesn't make any mistakes." And he really learned that his junior year how to fix it if I screwed it up.
Well, Coach, I actually want to take you back to that time, because I know for all of us, COVID feels like it was 5 minutes ago, but it was damn near 6 years ago. Take me back to hearing you talk about how he's a sophomore and he doesn't want to let the seniors on the team down. Then he doesn't get a shot to play his senior year. Do you guys talk about that? And can you take me back to where you were mentally at that time? Because I can only imagine what this kid would have did if he got a senior year. Coach, do you two talk about that, and what would have happened?
I can't tell you the number of times that, it's been brought up and we've talked about it. I think he will tell you that no matter what happens in his career, the biggest disappointment in his career will always be not having his senior year.
Wow.
And, we had some great things lined up. We were actually playing on ESPN week 2, I think it was. We were playing on ESPN at Myers Park on a Saturday at noon. And we were playing Trinity Christian out of Dallas, Texas, whose quarterback happened to be Shedeur Sanders.
Wow.
So you would have had a high school game between Drake Maye and Shedeur Sanders. And then the next week, we were playing in Bank of, we would have been the first ever high school game in Bank of America Stadium, the Panther Stadium. And that game was going to be broadcast on the NFL Network. So we had back-to-back weeks where we would have been on national television. We lost all that. We would have, probably been the number 1 ranked team in the state going into the season. So, yeah, it was very, very tough. And, for me personally, when you're a high school coach, he's obviously got plenty of chances to play on national TV in his career, but I don't get a lot of those. So, to miss that. But I always tell people, more than anything, I loved coaching him because I just liked being around him. He's a great kid to be around, a great guy. And just not being able to spend that time with him, in his senior year, to me was the worst part.
Absolutely. What ifs are a tough thing to get past, but I feel like he'll be just fine with the performance he is having now with the Patriots and the leader of this franchise. We do have some fan questions for you, Coach, if you don't mind. So I'm going to pull one of them up right here because, of course, fans are curious to know. Did you know in high school that Maye would adapt so well to the pros? He seems to be at home in the NFL in just year 2. Mind you, the sophomore slump that people like to try to throw on a quarterback's shoulders before he even gets a chance, I would say he's avoided quite well.
Now, I honestly, I knew it in high school. I knew he was going to be this good in high school. I tell people the story of when I left Myers Park, I went to the University of Maryland for a couple of years. I was in charge of all the recruiting and personnel there. And I got a call when Drake was a freshman. It was the year he didn't play. I got a call from a guy who's now his agent, who was trying to be his agent back then. And he asked me, he's like, "What do you think about this kid? What do you think is going to happen?" And I told him, I said, "Jim, he's going to be a first-round draft pick." And he kind of was like, this kid had never even at that point had taken a snap, in college. And I told him, I said, "He's going to be a first-round draft pick." I said, "He's that good." I said, "If you can sign him, you should sign him." And I'll never forget sitting at his pro day and talking to the agent at the pro day, and he's like, "Man, you were spot on." And I'm like, I know this kid. So I'm not surprised. This is exactly kind of what I figured would happen with him. And it's what I told people I told all the teams leading up to the draft that, he's going to be a great player, number one. But number two, when you pick a guy this high and when you make him your franchise quarterback, you want him he's going to be the face of your franchise, whether you like it or not. And I'm like, this is the kind of guy that you want to be the face of your franchise.
Coach, I want to get away from the emotional side because you love him. Now we love him too, okay? We all love Drake. I want the evaluator in you here. That's where I'm going to go because I look at this guy and I see everything we've talked about. I see leadership. I see that competitive nature, that dog competitor. But I also see an underrated, in my opinion, I think he's underrated athletically. I mean, this guy, 6'4", 225, you've seen him grow into his frame. You've seen his athleticism grow. I guess my question to you is, as you watch him now, where he is present day, talk to me about the growth. Talk to me about the physical growth you see, the mental growth, his game. Coach, I'm going to be honest with you. I mean, we'll go back to that draft because we're going to always look at this draft class just like we do back in the 83 draft and all of that, where you look at this and you say, man, Jaden Daniels had a special rookie year, no doubt. Caleb Williams has all the talent in the world. But this Drake Maye kid, for all these things we're talking about, all these boxes we're checking, he may be the one. When you see Drake's growth and you kind of compare him to his peers that came into this league, Coach, evaluator-wise, what do you see?
Well, listen, first off, I grew up in the D.C. area. I lived my whole life in the D.C. area until I moved south about 20 years ago. So I grew up a diehard Redskin fan. I mean, I lived and died with the Joe Gibbs Redskins. So on draft night, I might have thrown a couple of things at the TV when they picked Jaden Daniels because obviously I wanted Drake. So, it is what it is. I mean, I think it's worked out okay for them with Jaden Daniels. I think, honestly, in the long run, the team that may have to answer the questions could be the Bears, and the fact that, that they passed over him depending on how that turns out. But to answer your question about, his skill set, I always kind of joke that, there was always this talk that the person that held Michael Jordan back the most was Dean Smith. And I may be able to say that about Drake because, you watch his athleticism, his ability to run, his ability to extend plays and get out of things with his scrambling ability. We didn't let him do that in high school. Like we were like, we don't need you running. And, I think the first game of he started his sophomore year, he took off and broke a run and did one of those things where he jumps and tries to dive over people and all this. And he came back and he ended up getting the first down and we ended up scoring on the drive and he came back over and I said, hey, nice run. Don't ever, ever, ever do that again.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you.
And, in high school, man, you get guys like Drake Maye in high school, you're going to do everything you can to protect them and preserve them. So I probably held him back a little bit much. I remember one of the first 4 or 5 games he started at North Carolina, he carried the ball like 14 times. And I texted Phil Longo, who was the OC that time. I said, man, you're a better man than I am. I said, because if he carried the ball 14 times for me, we'd be pulling the defibrillator out because it would have driven me crazy. So I would say that's probably the biggest things that's changed since then is the fact that he uses his legs so much more than he did, for me. And again, that was probably me holding him back.
Well, I'm glad that your heart was able to stay intact and he found his stride regardless, especially here in New England. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us here on Boston has ended the chat. Everyone, Scott Chadwick, the former high school coach for Drake Maye. We hope to see you again, especially for an MVP conversation appropriately, Scott. Thank you.
Anytime, guys. Thanks for having me. I'll be on here anytime you need me.